living room this morning? Is it because I got spaghetti all over the microwave that one time? No, it's because you guys did a great job on your Keji photo last week. You did 3 times as much as you were supposed to. Keep up the good work. You know, I actually think this is the perfect spot between Akechi and the rest of the episode. I can want you guys to keep doing that, alright? If you don't, you'll have to do an entire episode entirely about Akechi, okay?
So, how's the job hunt going? Nobody's gonna hire me after I've worked for A1. Well, are you gonna animate Akechi then? No.
The episode starts off where the previous episode left off, with the Phantom Thieves meeting Yusuke. The thing is, they put that scene after the credits. If you didn't know that there are after credits scenes, like I didn't my first time around, you would have been very confused as to how this situation happened. Yusuke asks An to be a model for him, and I gotta say, this interaction perfectly portrays his character. Sai, once again, spoils the plot for us and reveals that the next target is Ichirusai Madarame, a famous painter. They're actually using a remix of the usual interrogation room music here, but it just seems like they changed a couple seconds in order to make a transition smoother. At least they did that instead of using a jump cut, and it does sound pretty good.
彼が長年隠し通してきた悪事をどうやって短期間で突き止めたの？よく思う。明智のこと忘れ。
Akechi knows next to nothing about the Phantom Thieves, and he isn't even looking for them yet. Also, Morgana might have been onto something when he said not to forget him, since the animators seem to have done just that. That's right, Akechi doesn't appear once in the entire episode. Someone's probably getting fired. They have a flashback to that morning, and it turns out that Yusuke had given them tickets to an art exhibit for a guy called Madarame. Now where have we heard that name before? That's right, the person Nakanohara's shadow blamed for his problems. Ren also seems to recognize that they share the same name, but doesn't bring it up. How am I supposed to know that this is a flashback? It's not in black and white, with a border on the top and bottom. Morgana simps for An some more, which is pretty much his only other character trait besides saying that he's not a cat, only to be interrupted by Makoto, who tells them that they can't be up there since Shiho. The next day, they go to Madarame's exhibit since Yusuke gave them tickets. Isn't the news crew breaking the rule about no cameras? Aren't the animators also breaking the rule since they're capturing the scene?
その無心が内なる美を育ててくれると。ね、聞いた？さすが言うこと違うわね。
A different perspective on what? How you get inspiration for art? From what I know, that's a pretty common perspective. Yusuke gets upset that An likes a painting and breaks the one-way line rule. Why do they put these rules in place if they're just going to ignore them? It's supposed to be raining right now. Well, who cares about the weather besides some hash brown on Discord? It turns out that someone had submitted a request on the fan site, asking them to change the heart of a famous painter. I wonder who that could be. There's an almost 100% chance that this is wrong, but I translated the bottom post, and I got, quote, "Aunt in the neighborhood is still a cat." Even if it's wrong, it's still good enough to include here. It's probably referencing one of the other Mementos missions. They decide to investigate Madarame on charges of plagiarism and abuse, despite possible risks. In order to get in, they have An model for Yusuke. As they're about to board a train to Yusuke's house, Morgana asks if Yusuke had responded and told them where to go. Come on, man, just use your 2 brain cells a bit more and you'll figure it out. It's not that hard. They confront Yusuke about Madarame as soon as he comes out of his house, but Yusuke is in denial and gets angry. Madarame comes out and makes himself seem like a nice person, inviting them in. Yusuke then shows them a painting called the Sayuri, which was apparently Madarame's best work. But he kicks them out shortly after because he has to help Madarame out. Why would you give An that time if you knew you had to help him out? You would have had the same amount of time, like not even 5 minutes. Speaking of time, how did an entire day pass? They were in there for literal minutes and it was nowhere near dusk. How long does it take to look at a single piece of art? They're supposed to meet Oya here, but apparently they're saving it for later. So they're messing with the story again! After Ryuji makes a comment that doesn't really fit, hang on, didn't they already have him do this for Kamoshida's palace? Anyways, they find out that Madarame has a palace, and they start looking for a keyword. However, they seem to be out of ideas for some reason, even though they suggest castle, prison, jail, warehouse, guidance counseling office, and farm in the game. Ren guesses it his first try, because reasons, but his logic is a bit of a stretch. While a museum is probably the most popular art-related building, it could have been an art school or a supply store. After entering the palace, they discover that Madarame has an extremely gaudy museum for a palace, reflecting his greed and lack of taste. They make their way into the museum via a skylight and end up finding a bunch of paintings on display. There are shadows in pretty much every room in the palace, so why not here? They hear a shadow Madarame talking with some guards, and I can see why they're doing this from the storytelling side of things, since they're supposed to find this information on a plaque, but it influences the viewer a lot more when Madarame actually says it. But why is he monologuing to some random guards? They're not elite or important by any means. Cartoon logic intensifies. The next day, they go back to Yusuke's house so that An can do a bit of modeling, and so that they can confront him again. But this time, he just ignores them. It turns out he was trying to paint a bit of a risky piece of art. If An isn't model material, then why would she have a job doing photography modeling? They leave after Yusuke gets upset again, and Mishima tells Ren that Nakanohara wants to meet up with them. They meet him, but try not to reveal their identities. This ends up making for a pretty good scene, as they just had Nakanohara meet them face to face in the game. Definitely an improvement here. It turns out that he wants to trigger a change of heart in Madarame in order to save Yusuke. Ren wouldn't have had time to run away before Nakanohara saw him. They agree to target Madarame, and then we see a depressed Yusuke at the end of the episode. Well, that's the end of the episode, or is it? No, because I don't think I've done this episode that much justice. That's part of why this video is slightly delayed compared to the others. This episode is full of character development, mostly for Yusuke. I know this series is called Persona 5 The Animation Sucks, but just because it sucks doesn't mean it's all bad. Let's take a closer look at the character development and all of the emotion that was put into this episode. Of course, we have one of the few actually funny moments in the anime at the beginning, where we realize that Yusuke is really emotional, doesn't know how to express himself correctly, and ends up coming off as eccentric. This carries through the episode, but isn't really seen as much. We later see that he greatly respects his teacher Madarame. This reason is enough to defend Madarame no matter the charge. The night before the exhibit, we see Yusuke looking at a particular painting with a look of sadness and longing. When An appreciates this painting later, we see some of his true emotions. That painting was his, but put on display as Madarame's. He starts off surprised and excited that An sees the anger and frustration he put into the painting, but it turns to anger and frustration when she attributes it to Madarame. He knows that Madarame is taking credit for his hard work, but he can't do anything about it because of the reason I mentioned before, and because it would be impossible to rebel against him. However, when confronted about these things the next day, he blatantly denies the allegations. Yusuke seems to stay with Madarame because, despite what he's doing to him, he wants to learn how to paint something as beautiful as the Sayuri, as well as that reason from before. While in the palace, we get some more info on how Madarame sees Yusuke. It turns out that Madarame wants to work Yusuke to death and reap the rewards of his artistic capabilities. It turns out that Yusuke already knows about this. He shows a lot of his pent-up anger when talking about it, while still defending Madarame's actions. He knows that he can't do anything about the situation, and he hates that Madarame can get away with doing this to him, but he can't let others know that. During the meeting with Nakanohara, it's revealed that Yusuke wants to leave, but he just can't bring himself to do it. The shot at the end shows how he really wants to paint something as great as the Sayuri, but is starting to doubt if it's worth it to keep with Monorame. The sigh he gives off at the end is probably from the emotional pain he's had to go through over his entire life due to Monorame. It sounds like he's breaking down, but forcing himself to get himself together so that Monorame doesn't see him like this. But anyways, that's the end of this episode, so I'll see you guys next week with episode 7. Actually, wait, that's this week.